Is Lam Angela, and I'm a fashion design and textile graduate. And in terms of my design aesthetic, I would call it very bold in terms of color and print. I'm very print driven, so I love working with highly detailed prints. And as for my design style, it's basically like athleisure and sportswear. So as for my final collection, my concept was Chinese culture. I thought of choosing that concept because of exploring my Chinese roots. So through that, I've looked into the Chinese hanfu and workwear worn during the 1800s by men, and also Dutch workman pants. So in terms of color, I explored Chinese architecture and also Chinese temples during the Tang Dynasty. And in terms of print, I've worked with Asian mythical creatures and also Chinese motifs, as you might know, the yin-yang sign. And so for my future plans, I hope to work in the industry to gain manufacturing knowledge for a few years and then to eventually open up my own brand. Thank you.
My name is Leeza Kalubowila and I'm a final year fashion design and textile student at AOD. So my collection Perfect Imperfections was mainly sustainably driven, mostly because I was passionate about and also worried about the amount of fabric wastage that was happening in the world, and I sort of wanted to help make an effective change and sort of reduction in it. So I basically had to take a different approach in terms of design, which was to sort of have my basic lineup and then sort of figure out the basic colors, prints and fabrics that I needed, and then go to places like Pamanua and PETA and then try to locate dead stock fabrics and then factory waste materials, and then come back and then sort of figure out how much of each fabrics that I have and then sort of place them into the garments that I have. So basically in terms of design, my design inspiration was basically sort of a harmonious marriage between 1970s clothing and imperial Chinese attire, sort of carefully paired with oriental batik prints which I did myself. So if I'm to talk a little bit about my brand, I didn't want it to just be sustainable clothing. I wanted it to be sort of a lifestyle brand that focused solely on sustainable products. So that's sort of what I tried to achieve here. Thank you.
Jayarathne. I'm a final year fashion and textile student. So this is my final year collection work. So I was inspired by acid attack peoples who suffers from different things. So mainly I went with Dior 1915 puff silhouettes and lot of things. So I have used lot of accessories to represent all the acid attacks people, and when it's come to the prints, so I mainly went with lot of holy festival colors to highlights all the acid attack peoples and the people who suffers from it. When it's come to the prints, I have used lot of acid attack peoples, the patches they have on their body and the scars and the patches, small things to indicate the people who suffers. So yeah, I want to tell it's not all about the outer surface. It's all humans who live in the society. So each and every human being should have equality in this country. And so at my last, I want to tell that I'm going to go with ready-to-wear collection and I'm going to open my own brand label. And yeah, thank you.
Chihiro Fernando, and this is my final major project for fashion design and textile. So my final major project is based on a TV series called Warrior Nun. It's where nuns fight a war for the greater good. I wanted to portray the light of the nuns and the femininity of the nuns with something dark and macabre like war and death. My collection is basically dark and yet so minimal, because I wanted to bring out the simplicity of the nuns, and I mostly layered my garments to bring out a bigger silhouette and elevate the look. I am always drawn to darker colored clothing and also large silhouettes. Basically, this collection is a women's wear collection, but I envisioned it on both a man and a woman. I feel like I have so much more to learn before venturing out on my own. So I'd like to first start off by practicing in the industry and gaining a bit of experience before going out on my own. Thank you.
Minali Wanigasinghe. I'm a final year fashion and textile student. Talking about my design aesthetics, I express my design thoughts through textiles and fabrics, and I'm very textile and detail oriented person. When I create a garment, I always consider the consumer's comfort as well as I want to express their personality within my garments. And talking about my final collection is about optimistic futurism, which represent the future fighters. So my collection is Autumn-Winter 21-22 oversized sports casual collection inspired by vintage Japanese samurai clothing and Zen philosophy. It aimed the new optimists, the consumers who can't pin down in terms of either age or the physical build. When I talk about my final collection textiles, I inspired a lot from the Japanese Ma and Wabi-Sabi philosophy, and I explore a lot in the Japanese textile techniques, and I twisted with them the Sri Lankan craft. So for my final collection, I use lightweight fabrics, especially linen as well as jersey. And talking about my prints, I inspired my print techniques by my own mark making techniques as well as the Zen garden patterns. Throughout this collection, I want to prove that the pandemic creates new routines and norms, and mainly giving hopes of positive lifestyle. So we just need to keep fighting and push the boundaries. So my future plans are, I want to work more with the industry, as well as I want to do more experiment in textiles and fabrics. Also, I want to create my own fashion brand, and I want to create something which brings Sri Lanka to the world. Thank you.
Aakashya Perera, and I'm a final year fashion and textile student. My design aesthetic is usually feminine and playful, and I tend to design a lot of resort wear and spring-summer collections. However, for the first time in 3 years, I've gone with an autumn-winter collection, and this is my final major project, which is inspired by the traditional Korean theme. There's a self-love dynamic that comes to this collection through the prints, and I feel like the importance of self-love has increased along with the pandemic when everybody was confined, and the sudden change in atmosphere definitely contributed to that. And I feel like over the years, my design aesthetic has become more print-based, and I feel like I'm a print-based designer. I've experimented a lot with prints and textile as well, textile being crochet. In my collection, I've used breederloo as well as different kind of prints, including heat transfer. My future plans would be to gain experience in the industry and hopefully own my own fashion brand for women's wear in the future. Thank you.
Chihiro Fernando. I'm 19 years old and I'm a fashion and design textile student. This is the story behind my final year collection, Monoras. I am a Sri Lankan girl with a Japanese name. So this became the key inspiration for my collection. I brought in the 1960s vintage Japanese Western wear and Sri Lankan traditional wear as my key garment development. My collection is aimed for women who are vibrant, confident and independent in the age range of 18 to 40 years old. Within my collection, I have given value back to factory waste to create this artistic collection. My collection consists of key elements such as pleating, hand embroidery, hand gold bonding, fabric dyeing, biru lace and batik prints. For my embellishments and my prints, I was inspired by a personal saying that was told to me, quoting, "Your eyes look like peacock feathers." So I took this nostalgic saying into my collection and brought in the Japanese ancient ukiyo paintings and developed my prints. Because of the pandemic and the lockdown, the factories and the artisans that I was expecting to work with was not a possibility. Because of this pandemic, I took this time while at home to do a lot of experimentations and a lot of trials and learn from my errors until I got what I wanted without looking for other alternatives. So I took this opportunity to do my crafts, especially batik, which I did for my first time, self-learned, and I proudly achieved what I wanted in my collection. I proudly present to you my final year collection, Monoras.
Bilmi Gamage, and I'm a final year fashion and textile student at AOD. My collection is called Fairchild, and it is a celebration of beauty, joyfulness and the innocence of youth. The inspiration for this collection came when I was thinking about the sadness and loneliness I felt during the pandemic in 2020. It felt as if the whole world was locked in an icy cage and we were just watching the spring go and the summer pass by. My collection aims to rediscover the joy and color of the summer we lost by incorporating spring florals with a combination of romantic silhouettes of the 18th century, 1960s outerwear with a twist of East Asian silhouettes to create a gender-fluid collection for a playful, vibrant soul. This collection is a gender-fluid collection, and as you can see, I celebrate the beauty of everything without any restriction for gender. It's about celebrating innocence, joy, and just a safe place away from all the darkness of the world. My designs favor a lot of pastel color palettes and intricate details, as you can see in this collection. I've used chiffon, organza and wool blended materials to make embellishments to showcase the spring florals. I've used frills and ruffles to bring the playfulness and subtle Lolita feel to the collection. Thinking of life after AOD, my future plans include interning, gaining more experience in the industry to one day start my own brand. Thank you.
My name is Erandi. I'm a final year fashion and textile design student. My final collection is a pre-fall collection and it was a focus on line relationship. Because of the coronavirus, people forced to share their feelings and communication through online, which I extract those two connection line as my design elements in this concept. And design silhouettes inspired by 1960s jackets and skirts. I always wanted to create a collection with bold and exciting visual effects, and I have used color blocking techniques to my collection. My future plans are to get more experience in this field and gain more knowledge about this industry so that I can start my own brand. And also I really wanted to be more specialized and skilled in design sketching, as I'm very passionate on that. And I would like to thank my lecturers and AOD staff. Thank you.
Parindya Jayasundara. I'm 22 years old. I'm a final year fashion and textile designing student from AOD. My signature style would be based on textiles and embroideries. I like to experiment with different kinds of fabrics and techniques on my garments. I'm a perfectionist, so I have a need for attention to detailing. I want my customers to feel comfortable and confident in what they wear. So I would describe my signature style in 4 words: quality, durability, reliability and aesthetics. And the brands that inspire me are Dior and Hermes. Therefore, my final major project is based on a concept during the Regency era, and my prints and embroideries are inspired from Russian and Indian embroideries, and my silhouette inspiration is from the artworks of a British sculptor called Henry Moore. And for promotional items, I have designed a few items such as shoes, accessories and makeup as well. And for my future, I would like to work in Bangladesh under a designing team to gain more experience and to understand more about the apparel industry and add that as a strength to my designing career. Thank you.
My name is Heshani. I'm a final year design and textile student here at AOD. This is my final collection, which was inspired by my hometown of Kandy. For the prints, I've used motifs from traditional art in Sri Lanka. And as for the textiles, I've worked with Kandian weave artisans in Kandy. Tumbara weave, also known as Kandian weave, is a dyeing art in Kandy. And from my collection, I wanted to bring the Sri Lankan artisan craftsmanship to, and I wanted to incorporate Sri Lankan artisanal crafts in my designs. As about the collection is a unisex spring and summer collection. The colors were inspired by Kandy. After the graduation, I wanted to work and gain more experience in the field, and when I can, I wanted to start my own brand. Finally, I would like to thank my lecturers at AOD and the staff. Thank you.
Hiteshi Pieris. I am a fashion and design student. My final major project is about Harajuku street style, also known as Tokyo street style. My brand is Tokyo of Hype, and my inspiration for colors were Tokyo street signboards in Tokyo city. It was all, I used neon colors and brighter tones because a lot of my inspirations were used as Harajuku street art. Since Harajuku street art is a lot more colorful, my prints were inspired on UK underground graffiti, and I combine Tokyo street art, which is known as Harajuku doodles. I mixed doodles and graffiti together. I combined them and I made an all-over print. I'm a person who loves to work with prints, so in the future I would like to work in the fashion industry and maybe later on start my own business. That would be my plan for the future. Thank you.
My name is Imara Perera. I'm a final year textile graduate from AOD. My signature style would be something conceptual, mainly in women's wear, that can be worn both elegant and casual at the same time. For my final major project is called Retrospect. Retrospect is a spring-summer women's wear line that is surrounded by the 1990s. It includes corsets, bold sleeves and shirts as well. And the colors include pastel and neutral tones. The main focus for my collection was the textile aspect, which is inspired by stained glass from historical monuments, which include in churches and mosques. So basically the textile aspect from the stained glass is really what brought my collection together. For my final plans after I graduate AOD, I would like to educate myself and get more experience in the fashion industry, and later on I would love to create my own brand, which includes in sustainability.
Heshani, a final year fashion design and textile student at AOD. My inspiration was driven by the 1950s women's wear clothing. Basically, I love to play with the volume of the garments. So I added a lot of frillings, gatherings and exaggerated puff sleeves, cocoon coats to my final year collection. My print inspiration came from vintage botanical flowers. Color inspiration came from pastel colors. I have used pastel colors throughout my collection. In the future, I would like to work in the industry and gain knowledge and start up my own brand. Thank you.
Kanishka Rodrigo, and I'm a final year fashion and textile design student at AOD. And my signature style is inspired by Grecian clothing, which is feminine, powerful, minimal, yet elegant. My final collection is designed for spring and summer resort wear, which is inspired by the Greek mythical story, the Three Sisters of Fate, which represents the cycle of life, birth and death. My concept is all about enchanting women or the powerful women. And long story short, the purpose of the final collection is to empower women and also to simply celebrate every woman. The textile I used here is macrame and prints, which is inspired by celestial symbols. The main reason I used macrame is because most of the Grecian people use macrame finished accessories and textiles on their garments. So all of these prints are hand-drawn art, which is developed by Photoshop. So after the completion of this, I would like to work in the industry for a few years and then start off with my own brand. And finally, I should mention all my tutors, guidance and the immense support they have given throughout the 3 years and also for the final collection. Thank you.
And I'm a final year fashion and textile student at AOD. My collection is about celebrating modern masculinity. It's about men who are not afraid to show their vulnerable and emotional selves. The society can force certain masculine behavior that can be toxic, such as not to cry and not to behave in certain ways because that might look feminine, and also to man up, and that leads to male supremacy and from childhood for boys to fit into these toxic standards without realizing them. I want to celebrate emotional men who are often get criticized by the society and men who are unable to show their vulnerable selves because of the societal pressure. My designs are a harmony of Western and Eastern design elements. I refer to 90s 40s style of tailoring, and my silhouette inspirations are drawn from traditional Japanese kimonos and samurai clothing to create an androgynous style. Also, my prints are inspired from vintage Japanese magazine prints and the prints that are on kimonos. I also did a series of dyeing, and I developed them digitally to get the end result that I wanted, and I used printing techniques as sublimation and screen printing and gold foiling to develop my textiles further. If I talk about whom would wear my clothes, what I have to say is my clothes are not meant for a certain gender. It can be worn by anyone who does not want to adhere to societal norms, and the urban spirit of my collection fits into anyone who wants to question the society and live on their own terms and exist on their own will. Thank you.
Koshani Thilakshana, and I'm a final year fashion and textile design student. So this is my final year fashion collection. When it comes to my collection is based on Sri Lankan heritage craft, which are batik and biralu. So when it comes to the garment inspiration, My main inspiration was the low caste people's clothing, Sri Lanka, especially Rhodia people's clothing, and also the ancient Sri Lankans clothing. So my concept was came from one of my favorite book called Lovina, and it is about the Sri Lankan love saga of Sir Thomas Maitland and a Rhodia girl Lovina. Through my collection, what I wanted to do is to break the wall between the low caste and high caste people in the society. Actually, what I wanted to do most importantly is like to give the same equality and the opportunity what we are having now in the society to the Rhodia people, because those kind of people, they don't have the same opportunities and equalities what we are having. So that's the main thing what I wanted to like do through my collection. Because of that, I have designed my collection as a workwear and a casual collection. And yeah, after graduation, I'm planning to work in the industry to gain more knowledge and experience. After that, I'm planning to start my own clothing brand. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.